We'll be starting in just a few minutes. I want to just give you this time if you'd be willing to put your phone on silent or do not disturb or just turn it off. However you'd like to do that. But if you'd be willing to check your phone this time, I appreciate it. Good afternoon. My name is Pastor Ryan, and to many of you, it's far too recently that unfortunately we were gathered on an occasion like this. But I do want to thank you once again for coming to be a part of this celebration of life with this precious family. Today we're going to be remembering and celebrating David, given name, Pete, chosen name, Byron. And it is quite the life to celebrate. I've been delighted to learn much more about him from his wife and daughters than I knew before. And such a gift to know that he was such a gift to so many. So as we begin this time of remembering, celebrating his life, but also grieving together, let's commit all of this time to the Father. Father in heaven, we come to you knowing that your promises are sure, your love is deep, your compassion is great. So I ask you that you would surround those here, those watching from home, whose hearts are heavy, whose grief is so strong, that you would be their comfort, you would be their companion, you would be their helper. I pray that you will bring unity, a true sense of oneness to those gathered in this place today and all those watching. Pray, Lord, that you will be honored even as you honor them. And all of it in Jesus' name. Amen. To begin our time, I'm going to invite Pete's 3 daughters up to share with us about him. So I welcome up Stephanie, Sarah, and Lisa. And then after they share, we're also going to share in a special song today.
I'm Stephanie. I'm Pete's oldest daughter. Thank you for coming today to honor our dad, David Pete Byron. Dave became Pete because Dad and his friends had a superhero club, and he was Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker. Well, the name stuck, and many of you probably know him as Pete, but he was always Dave to his mom, who guided him to heaven on her new wings earlier this week. Now, my dad's oldest brother, Joe, could not be here. He's in California, so he prepared some words that he wanted us to share with everybody. So I volunteered to read those to everyone. It's a little bit on his background growing up as a child. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to help celebrate the life of Dave, Pete Byron, my brother, the middle sibling of the Byron brood. There were 5 of us in the brood, with only 8 years between me, the oldest, and Larry, the youngest. We were boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, a nice symmetrical balance, with Dave right in the center. We each had our own unique personalities, our own likes and dislikes, tastes and styles, but we were still abroad with as many similarities as we had differences. Of the brood, Dave was the quiet one. Mom always said he was the most content baby and was never any trouble. She said he was happy all the time and was never colicky, demanding, or whiny like the rest of us. In early group photos, Dave was nearly always grinning. Even as he got older, he always had this kind of illegal smile. He knew something we didn't know, like he was in on a joke that we were slow to catch on or had some inside information about something that was about to happen. He was easily pleased and seemed to have far less ego than the rest of us. He was content with simpler things and lived in the moment very well. He laughed a lot, always seemed grateful to be included in things, and always appreciated a good time. He was fearless, generous, and independent for a middle child. As he grew, he became very popular. Girls always thought he was cute. A lot of people said, and some still say, we look a lot alike, but no one ever thought I was cute. How can 2 people look alike and one is cute and one is not? I didn't understand it then, but I do now. His smile and charm. If you're smiling and quiet with knowing eyes, you are automatically cool. Dave was cool as a boy and stayed cool throughout his life. Knowing Pete, he used that nickname more as he grew, was cool. He seemed to have an inside track on things. He was also honest and loyal, and you just knew it by looking at him. Still, siblings will always compete, and brothers will be brothers, and we fought often. There was never blood or bruises, but sometimes tears and resentment. We always made up and said we wanted to be perfect brothers, just like Wally and the beaver. Dave usually wanted to do what I did, go swimming at Coldstream Dam or Black Moshannon, go to pirate baseball games, play the cornet in the band, join the Boy Scouts and camp, and so many other things. It sometimes annoyed me, but in time, I took it as a sign of respect and brotherly love. I've come to discover that growing up, we really were best friends. He always stood up for me, especially in the very early 70s when I went off to the city and became a hippie. I have so many anecdotes to share with Dave. A favorite was when I returned from summer camp. I had a counselor named Ziggy who claimed that if one became lost in the wild, one could survive by eating ants. I did not care to try it, but knew when I got home I could try it out on Dave. As we sat together on the back porch steps, I told him about the nutritional value of an ant. Wow, he explained, and asked if the ants on the brick sidewalk at our feet were the edible type. Of course, I said, as I picked up a tiny red one and pretended to put it into my mouth. That one tasted just like peppermint. Within a short time, Dave had consumed scores of the tiny red ants, several of the large black variety. I tried to get him to eat an earthworm. Earthworms are dirty, he complained. I won't try it unless we wash it off. Unfortunately, for the neighborhood gang who had come by to watch, or fortunately for Dave, depending on how you look at it, our sister Barb discovered us hosing off the worm and ran inside to tell Mom. Mom arrived to stop the show right in the nick of time. I was grounded for the remainder of the summer, and Dave was pampered and coddled, but heck, it was worth it. I came home for the summer after my first year in college and decided Dave needed an out-of-town experience. He had just completed his sophomore year in high school and had little experience of the world. So I bought a used Volkswagen Bug and we went off to New York City together. There he was exposed to live rock music and other aspects of the city life. All in all, he did okay. We drove down the coast to Washington, D.C., stopping here and there and sleeping in the car. He was curled up in the back and I had the gear shift lever in my back. After a week on the road, we returned home, and coming down the 53 into Chester Hill, the car started making terrible noises and stopped dead. The rear axle had broken. We walked the rest of the way. I was freaked out, but he thought it was great. Dave and I worked together doing construction for our dad's company the rest of the summer. Wanting to prove that I was as good as a foreman, Leroy Shaw, I begged my dad to make me lead man on the job. Dad hesitated. I wasn't sure he trusted me, but eventually gave in. For a crew, I was given only one guy. Yep, you guessed it, Dave. I thought it was a dirty trick, but we pulled it off. We were partners for the rest of the summer. My favorite story about Dave is the risky business episode. This was the summer after the New York trip. He was 16, had his driver's license, and a car. Mom and Dad had gone out of town for my sister's graduation from nurses training and were spending the night away. I had stopped by the house only to discover that Dave and his pals decided to take over the place and have a party. Hey, Joe, have a drink. Dave slurred at me, pointing to the giant pyramid of empties on the dining room table. The place was a mess and filled with people. I told him to be cool and went to my dad's wood shop in North Phillipsburg where I was working on a project. While inside, I heard a crunch in the gravel driveway. It was Mom and Dad. They had decided not to spend the night away, driving back to Phillipsburg, and had seen my car, so decided to stop before they went home. They left. I called Dave. Get out of there. Mom and Dad will be home in 5 minutes. Don't do anything stupid. Well, he did something stupid, and I'll have to tell you the whole story another time. But I will say it involved a car in a bedroom, a yard full of empty cans, me being chased around by a woman with a cup of coffee, and a heated argument with a local cop about tampering with evidence. Oh, and Dave lost his license for 15 days and had to sign over his checks for a whole summer of work. Dave was not an A student. He did not want to go to college, but his good nature, loyalty, work ethic, and fearlessness made him exceptional. He helped everyone, could make anything happen, and truly loved his life. He was generous and had an exceptional love for his wife and family. He was a truly big man in the workplace, the community, the state, and even the country. I am so proud of Dave and miss him a lot. Even though we live on different sides of the country, and we only get together once a year at most, he was always my special best friend. I know all of you have felt this influence and have been affected by him sometime or another, and I'll bet he made your life better. He certainly made mine better. So thanks, Uncle Joe, for those kind words of our father. And I think that we would all agree, and Pete would probably say, that Georgia made his better. Pete was dating Georgia's neighbor, but he always thought she was cute. She denied his dating request quite a few times, but she eventually gave in. Pete proposed in the most romantic way possible in the Nittany Mall parking lot. He'd actually prepared to put the ring in a hope chest that he made for her. He was a meticulous craftsman and learned carpentry from his dad, but he couldn't wait to give it to her, and it sat on the dash until the big moment. They were married on May 27, 1978, in front of their friends and family at First Church of Christ, with a reception at the Hope Fire Hall. Pete was a lifetime member of the Hope Fire Company, an EMT in his younger days, a committed elk, and so much more. He didn't need to be Spider-Man to be part of the superhero club. He was a superhero in his own right. Some things that I would like to say about my dad now. To me, my dad truly was a superhero. He was there to my rescue no matter what it was, what time, or how far he had to go to get me. I am sure I gave him most of his gray hairs. He always told me, Steph, I did those things too, but I never got caught. My dad was a great man. You can see this by the amount of people that are here and have reached out to us during this difficult time. Dave, Pete, Dad, Pat, touched so many lives and truly was a real life superhero.
So I'm Sarah, aka Bud number 2. So Dad always called us Bud. And I'm definitely going to miss hearing that. Sorry. My dad was the most generous person I've ever met. He was generous in so many ways, but especially with his time, which we never seemed to have enough of. He would give you the shirt off his back. Of course, it would be a Penn State, P.O. Mounties, Disney, or Spider-Man shirt. He spent so much time in his truck, be it blue, red, or orange, to see me, pick me up, or move me around the country. And I was lucky enough to get a lot of one-on-one dad time in this way when he'd pick me up from the train station in Harrisburg. Those drives to Phillipsburg never felt long enough. It was mostly me talking while Dad listened, but he always made me feel like he wanted to hear what I had to say. Some of my favorite Dad memories took place at Disney World, and he always knew when it was time to stop for ice cream at Disney World. When Alina was a toddler at Disney World, he carried her everywhere, never wanting to put her down. And now, we'll carry him with us in our hearts at Disney World and everywhere else we go. He definitely wasn't given enough time, but Pete Byron lived his life. He lived a life of generosity, kindness, humor. He laughed like that. Love and friendship. And I like to think that one day we'll see him again, waiting for us at the bar with his little glass of Jenny Light, ready to cheers a life well lived. And if we follow Pete's example, it will definitely be a life well lived.
My dad once told me, which Stephanie kind of touched upon this, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't get caught. So these wise words tell you how easygoing he was, from dealing with my public temper tantrums when I was young to putting up with all of us girls on our family vacations. Dad would just go with the flow. Like Sarah said, he called all of us bud. And it's gonna be really hard not hearing him say that again. The last text message I have from my dad was on his birthday on September 11th. I sent a picture of my son Corbin and I wrote, "Corbin says happy birthday, Pap." And Dad responded, "Thanks, little buddy." So if my dad ever called you bud or buddy, you were a lucky person. No amount of, time, preparation, or revising this speech today will ever sound good enough or properly convey how amazing my dad was. And going over all of his accomplishments and good deeds would take days. So I'm gonna keep things fairly short, but rest assured, Dad, I will talk to you often. And I thank you for your help in raising me to be who I am today. So, kind of to end things on our end, we wanted to share something kind of personal that we had with our dad. A lot of you know that he liked to sing, that he really liked to sing to his girls. When we were young, he would sing us songs before bed. They were what you would call oldies. But the song that stays with us the most is called Yellowbird. I think all three of us sang this song to him recently when he was ill. So we thought everyone might like to hear it today. And if you ever do hear it, think of our dad.
High in the tree. yellow bird, to sit all alone like me. Did your lady friend leave your nest again? That is very sad, makes me feel so bad. You can fly away in the sky away, you're more lucky than me. I also had a pretty girl, she you can fly away in the sky away, you're more lucky than me. I also had a pretty girl, she more lucky than me.
Try one more time. No? The little voices said, "Uh-oh." You captured it exactly. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what happened. It was downloaded in its entirety. All right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It was set up to work. I had never heard Yellowbird before until they were talking about their dad singing it to them. And now I'm picturing myself singing it to my kids. It's a perfect kind of song to sing to your kids. And to be honest with you, based on what I've heard of him, that matches his personality real well. Just fun and lighthearted and sincere. As I said, I heard a lot about Pete. I'm just gonna list off some of the phrases I wrote down, if that's okay, without explanation. If you know what it is, cool. If not, okay. You can ask someone afterwards. Matchbook cars, lined up from the front door to the back door, if I remember correctly. Right? Baseball cards. Leather jacket gang. I like that part of the story. Karaoke. With some dancing. Does that sound right? Hunting, golfing, butchering, maybe an animal hung up in the garage while the girls are going to school. Meticulous. The Elks. Handyman, but not a mechanic. Dad naps. Apparently epic dad naps. Giant Santa. He was in the mix helping get the Giant Santa set up. Volunteer firefighter. Very generous. Help anyone. Penn State tailgating. And connected to that, Bloody Marys. That's one of his things. All right. Letting Dana drive. The only one to do so, as far as I know. Letting Dana drive. She actually mentioned it to me as well. We'll see. That was a special memory for Dana. And a Disney train set. Big one. You already heard about Disney World and the t-shirts, but I'll say it again. The reason I like those kinds of pictures of a person, perhaps you saw the obituary type information, and it does tell you a lot about their family. An obituary tells you a lot about accomplishments that are publicly known. But those kinds of details, those little phrases and everything they represent, that's what people that know and love them day after day think of. It's the personal, this is Pete kind of things. And I just wanted to share with you today some hope. And some of you, you heard me speak, like I said, far too recently, and I'm not going to repeat all the things I said then. But hope is the refrain. Because when you come to the living God, the God of life and healing, the God of peace, the God of great compassion, he designed each and every human person. He did that. And each and every human person is one of his images in the world. And each person carries such a weight of importance, of significance, of impact. One reason I love to hear about a person like Pete is that you don't have to tell somebody those things. They know because of a life lived, as you heard it described. This morning, or this afternoon, I should say, as we think together on life, and I know this is something that happens when you come together in times like this. It should happen. You think about life carefully. You also think about death, as you should, carefully. But you also think about everything between birth and life, or death, I should say. I hope carefully. I was looking at the pictures, and they're still going through. I was looking at one of the pictures really struck me. He was standing by the house, just a little thing. I don't even know how old he would be, just a little thing, and he's just caught in time. Pete. And I see these other pictures where he's a grown man, he's got children, he's got a wife, he's lived a whole life. I'm thinking, that's the same person. A little thing standing carefree next to the side of some house, maybe his house, I don't even know what the house is. All the way through the story of when he passed away. And I'm thinking about my own children, who used to be those little things standing carefree next to a house. Now they're teenagers. I'm thinking of my own story where I used to be a little kid just standing oblivious next to a house, and these 40 years that have passed by. I wanted to encourage you from the viewpoint of our Master, our Maker, our Father, our King. You are, in every real way, his children. He has watched you from the moment he formed you. In his mind, you are this little one, and you are who you are now, and you are who you're going to be. His fatherly mind and heart sees you with such deep love and affection, just as we heard Pete viewed his daughters. And I wanted to encourage you, and I hope if you've heard what I said before about the conquest over death, and we need to remember that on days like this for sure. Also remember the preciousness of life, and not just Pete's, but certainly Pete's, and yours, and the one sitting next to you. I hope that in times like this you reflect on the gift of life, not only that God gave you as he formed you in your mother's womb and has preserved up to this moment, but the preciousness of life that was so great that he gave his one true Son, different than any other of us as his children, uniquely God's Son, Jesus, so that your life could be truly full and endless. It's in Jesus. And the fact that he would give his life, shed his blood for people like us, it leaves all questions answered. How precious is life? I want to encourage you today that as we think about what is life, what is death, what does it all mean? There are mysteries, true. There are definitely things God has made known, true. But at the heart of it all is the question, how do I live it? now. And Pete exemplified exactly what I see God saying, Jesus doing. Be generous. Be generous. To your children, yes, be generous. To your spouse, and I have a very real sense that the life you shared with Pete, Georgia, was a generous one. Both directions. Would that be fair to say? Be generous even with the stranger. Be generous even with the enemy. And in this time, we're hoping that you'll be generous and share about Pete. Tell us the things that you saw in him, whether they're funny or they cause you to tear up. Tell us the things that you saw in this man that not only helped you appreciate him, but helped you realize that you are important too because of how he treated you. God made us as his images. Then he called us to see each other as his images too. And at the heart of that is a call to love God as we love each other. And a man named Pete Byron exemplified, as she used the word superhero. I love the Spider-Man connection. I just couldn't stop smiling about it after they told me that. Changed his name because of Spider-Man, yes. That heart, that heroic heart of looking out for others. This is the essence of love. Jesus showed it best. Pete showed it very well as well. So we're going to go into a time of sharing, but not just yet. And Pete's sister Barb is going to start us off. But before we do that, and I want to give you that heads up so you can be thinking, because I'm hoping others will share as well. People at home are watching and listening, and I'm sure they'd love to hear it as well. Because, of course, everyone here can stand around afterward and tell each other those things. But those at home, they would like to hear it in these times, I'm sure. But before we get to that, Dana and Tim are going to share a song with us at the piano that is going to just help us reflect on the goodness of God and the sweetness of life with him. That was wonderful, thank you. And that song expresses the sweetness of life with Jesus our Master, Father our God, God our Father. And I want to just to invite you again before we spend some time sharing together. In moments like this, in all moments really, will you call on him? He's good. He's kind. He's wise. And he understands exactly what we're going through. Not a distant, uninterested, cruel God, but a Father of deep love and compassion, the kind that Pete gave us a glimpse of. Call on him and know he hears you. I'm going to invite Barb to come now and share about her brother. And then I'll give others a chance, if you want to be thinking about that, to share after she's done.
This is going to be hard. First of all, I want to tell Georgia, Stephanie, Sarah, Lisa, and your families that my brothers, Joe and Larry, offer their deepest sympathy and are saddened that we're not able to be here today. Distance, surgery, and the rise in COVID have kept them away. But they're online, and they're looking forward to that summer celebration of Dave's life that Georgia talked about. My brother Dave, known to most as Pete, and I were close in age. He just turned 65. I'm 66. His arrival in September of 1955 ended my time of being the baby in the family. From then on, I was a big sister now. He didn't stay the baby for long because not long after he was born, another, year and a half or so, 18 months, Judy was born, and then after Judy was Larry, so we rounded up our brood number to 5. Now, as previously stated, I remember Dave also being a happy little boy, quiet, well-behaved. Yeah, he was well-behaved as a child. I don't know about later in life. He loved to play. Give him a new toy, and he could be entertained for hours. He did have that collection of Matchbox cars, and he would line them up from the front door all through the living room, the dining room, down to the kitchen, in a parade-like fashion. I can picture my mother having to dance around the cars as she prepared dinner that night. As a child, I liked to play house. And of course, I recruited Dave to be my husband and the dad to various dolls and teddy bears sitting around the little table. We had a really nice kitchen set that my dad had made. So I even forced him to participate in tea parties, but I didn't serve ants or worms. I'd never heard that story till I read that. He was a good sport, and he played along with everything that I wanted him to do as the dad. But I think our play was good training for him as he grew up, married, and had real children of his own, because he became the best dad ever to Stephanie, Sarah, and Lisa. I think he was born to be a dad, as he was so kind, caring, considerate, loving, and fun. Girls, he and your mom have led you and influenced you to become the successful and caring and creative young women that you are today. And Georgia, I think you were the perfect match for Dave. 42 years together have proved that. Thank you for taking care of him, especially these last hard 6 months. I was blessed to have been able to spend time with my brother the day before he passed away. And although he was having difficulty speaking and was hard to understand, I knew he could hear me because he would smile with his eyes. I think we've all learned to do that through COVID and the mask wearing. I told him specifically, I would say something and he would turn and look at me, and I knew he got what I said. I told him, Dave, when you get up there to heaven, you need to have a talk with Joe Paterno about those Nittany Lions. He was having difficulty speaking, but I knew he could hear me. Before I left for the day, I kissed him on the forehead. I told him what a good brother he was and how much I loved him. And then, very clearly, I heard his voice say, I love you too. I love you, Georgia. I love my nieces and their families. I'm so happy that you've included me in all the planning and the preparation for this service. We'll always share a special bond. Please know that I'm always here for you because we're family, and family is so important.
Thank you, Barb. Is there anyone else that would like to share? You're welcome to come up here. You're welcome to stand where you are. There is a boom mic on that camera, so hopefully people can pick you up, but the mic, I think, is the best way to go. Thank you.
I'm Judy. I'm the little sister. I'm the one that spoiled his era of being the youngest and spoiled. Although anyone that went to school with Peter, especially in middle school and high school, I was better known as Peter's little sister. I was more widely known as that as I was by my name, Judy. And I was quite okay with that because I thought Dave was the coolest guy. He was so good looking. He always smiled and everybody loved him. So I loved my title as Pete's little sister. I just have a few stories to tell him of him that I remember. I remember when I was in elementary school, I was very young and I was really into books. Went to the library all the time and he would give me his books. And just because he knew I liked books. Another time when my parents went to the villa in Altoona, as they did sometimes, they would not want to take the whole brood of us, 5 of us, so they'd give us each $1 to stay home. And this was back in the 60s, so $1 would buy 20 candy bars. It was a lot of money. So we would stay home. And sometimes my brothers would like to pick on me because I was very pickable. I was very quiet and reserved. So one day, Joe and Dave, probably more Joe than Dave, but anyways, they called me a name that upset me tremendously. They called me a Homo sapien. And I was seriously upset, very angry. I cried, and I could not wait for my parents to get home so I could tell them what they called me. Obviously, I had no clue what it was. But my parents came home, walked through the door, and I ran. They hardly made it in the door until I got there, and I told them what Joe and Dave were calling me. Well, after about 5 minutes of my parents laughing hysterically and wiping their tears, they told me what it meant. So they got a real big kick out of that. I will tell you that later I did get revenge on Dave. When I was in elementary school, I had a huge, huge crush on a twin boy. His name was Dorsey Gallagher, and I had such a crush on him. Of course, he didn't know who I was, unless he knew me. I was Pete's little sister. But he collected baseball cards, I heard. I overheard him talking with friends about baseball cards. So I really thought Dave was probably done with his baseball cards, not that interested anymore. So I stole his big box of baseball cards, and I ran up to, it's just past Prescow Street where this kid lived, and I snuck into his backyard, and I put that box of baseball cards by his back door, and I put his name on it. And I thought it was a big secret, but when I told Stephanie and Lisa and Sarah, they said, "Oh, you mean the baseball cards?" I'm like, "Oh, I thought that was just my secret alone." So God, forgive me for stealing his baseball cards and giving them away. I have to say that it didn't do me any good. Even after giving Dorsey those baseball cards, he still didn't know who I was. And he has no idea, probably to this day, who left him that big box of baseball cards. So, sorry, Pete, I do apologize. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy, for sharing that. They did mention the baseball cards. Thank you for fessing up. It's good for the soul. Is there anyone else who'd like to share about Pete? All right. Please, come on up.
Everybody. I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to try. I was looking at the pictures up there, and I saw the one from 1960. That's when I met Pete, in 1960. And we ran around together through high school and junior high and after, and we've been together ever since. But I do have a couple stories about him. and the part about not getting caught, that he never got caught, that's not true. That's not true at all. We got caught more than a few times. But the best time was when we got caught. And kids, don't try this at home. We shimmied up the elementary school roof. And it was kind of funny, really. But there's probably 6 of us up there. And somebody called the cops on us. So our plan was go up there. There's a trap door, go down. You know, see, you just mess around and not do anything. It's like where they kept their food and their soda and stuff, and we were going to get down and well, it was really dumb. But anyway, somebody called the cops, and we're up there running around on the roof, and we look over on the one side, and there's cops on this side, and Pete says, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Let's go to the other side." Well, there's cops on the other side. And I said, "Pete, let's go down. There's a roof. You can jump off the one roof, go down to the other roof, and then we're going to jump off that roof and we're going to run. Well, I didn't know that roof was like 25 feet down. So anyway, of course, we had to get down. So we shimmy back down. And they put us in the we're just like, I don't know, ninth grade something, 8th grade. But they put us in the car, a whole bunch, I don't know, there must have been 6 of us in that car. And they took us to the mayor's house. And they went up and they said, Mayor, what are we supposed to do with these kids? And he says, well, take them home and tell their parents. And we're like in the car saying, no, take us to the station, put us under arrest. Because we didn't want to do that. But we never did anything real bad. We were just kids. But I do recall another time when, there's a little theme here. But there was another time when we were riding around our friend's van. His name was Willie. And Pete this was Pete. And Pete, there's about, a bunch of us in there. And another kid that was named Willie was in there. And Pete said, well, he was telling us about this girl that out in Curtis Park that had a crush on Willie. And I said, oh, okay. And we're all thinking, and he said, Willie, you want to go up and see her? And Willie's like, no. He's like, really? So Pete, I'm pretty sure it's Pete's idea. They stopped the van, and we took Willie out of the van, and we hog-tied him. We hog-tied him. We took him up to this girl's house, threw him out in the middle of the lawn, rang the doorbell, and we all jumped the van, took off. And oh my gosh, that was funny. That was great. And I said there was a little theme here, so that's not the first person we ever tied up. So, one Halloween night, we would go up to Curtis Park, and we'd meet up with the Curtis Park kids. We were like, all running around trying to just mess around up in front of the high school. So we decided to, this one kid, he was getting on our nerves. So we decided we're going to tie him to the flagpole of the school. So we did. But first we had to go, after we tied him, we had to go give the cops patrol up there. So we'd go find the cops. So they would chase us up by the flagpole and pick him up. And that's exactly what they did. They went up, they untied him, they put him in the car, took him down the stairs. I don't know why they took him down, because he was like, he was innocent. But he didn't tell on any of us. But we had a lot of fun growing up. We did a lot of things, but we basically just played PG every day in baseball and ran around together. And then, we got older, and then Pete met Georgia, and that was the perfect pair. They were the perfect match. And they had a wonderful life, and they had 3 wonderful kids, and they're all grown up and have their own kids now. And I have to say one more thing, and I don't think I could do this. About last Sunday, when I got to FaceTime Pete, the girls called me up in Georgia, and B came running down and said, somebody's on the phone, wants to talk to you, FaceTime, or on the iPad. And I ran upstairs, and there's the girls, Steph and Lisa, and Pete. Pete was laying in his bed, and I got to talk to him. A few minutes, he was tired. And I got to the last thing I said to him, I love you, Pete. And he says, I love you, Bill.
Thank you for sharing those stories. Most people can't tell those stories about Pete's past. Thank you. That's the thing. Each person has their unique piece of Pete that they get to share. Is there anyone else that would like to do that?
For everyone that don't know me, I am Logan. I am Lisa's, the youngest daughter's husband. I didn't get to know Pete nearly as long as a lot of us, but it was great knowing him while I did. I can still remember, I knew Pete before I knew Lisa. I worked with him at Lee's for several years, and knew just he was the problem solver. He is who you went to. Didn't matter what department you were in, what job you were doing, what you were doing. You could go to Pete for anything. And anyone that's dealt with him in his later years, you would get the 10 seconds of silence and just the stare. And then every answer you ever needed, it was there. But I can remember Lisa started working at Lee's. We started dating. And I'll never forget having to go meet him at his house for the first time. After working with him professionally, I just felt like a little elementary school kid going to the principal's house for dinner that night or something. It just was so strange. And as the weeks went on, the months went on, it was just, I just wasn't sure. I'm just Pete and his quiet and reservedness. I don't know if your dad just likes me or what's going on. She's like, oh, you'll know. And I said, how will I know? She said, he'll call you buddy. She's like, you'll know. That's when you know you've made it with Pete. We were several months later at a Penn State game when Pete looked up at me and said, let's have a drink, buddy. And Lisa just looked over at me and smiled. And that's when you knew you made it with Pete, that you were in for life. So then Lisa and I were married, and I became part of camp. And I'm telling you the stories from camp. And that's where I met Billy, that you spoke. All the fun we had at camp, the trouble we made at camp. That the stories there, some that can be told, some that can't. That I always thought Pete was the guy you always went to, that always had the answers, that would always get you out of trouble. But the more I thought about it, the more times I was like, I think Pete's called me more times of him being in trouble, that I had to go get Pete than I had to call him and get myself out of trouble. That so young at heart, just always was in it for the good time. That he worked so hard and so diligently at everything that he did to provide just the best life for his family. But he left work at work, and just after work, it was all about the fun. It's all that mattered. The grandkids, Disney trips to anywhere, anything he could do. It was just about having fun.
Thank you. It's awesome. Anyone else? And of course, you don't have to do it publicly in this way. You can always share in conversation afterwards. Oh, good.
Good afternoon. The first story was somewhat correct. I agree with that. I'm not sure if the experience is exactly the same, but as an identical twin, I can testify to the fact that there's always one brother that seems to get all the attention and the other one's completely ignored. I've been dealing with Doug getting all the attention for quite some time. Pete Byron was also a great singer. I've had that experience. Pete, I think, is the only person I know that can sing it beautifully, but can weave Okie from Muskogee in the same breath and then pivot and go immediately to Sinatra's My Way, and it makes perfect sense somehow. But Pete Byron had an excellent voice. I was lucky enough to sing with him a couple of times. Georgia Demchak nodded at me and gave me the signal that we probably do need to talk a little bit about Pete's Elks record today. I'm Dan Nelson. Like Pete, I'm a past district deputy from Phillipsburg Lodge. And I'm not sure that there's anyone in any Elk circle anywhere near here that can think of our lodge and not think of Pete Byron as a critical person and a very important individual to what Phillipsburg Lodge has become. Pete was a top-tier Elks leader. And these fraternal organizations that still do have a place, I don't know exactly what the future holds for fraternal orders necessarily, but they tend to tell us to follow certain ideals and to live up to certain principles that should guide us in our life. And in the Elks order, charity, justice, brotherly love, and fidelity are the four principles that we tend to follow. And Pete had them all and was an excellent example of them all. Pete's charity work was top-notch. You all heard about him being a giving spirit today. I'm going to talk about just one. It's not the only one, but it is one. His work on behalf of the Home Service Program, which does nothing but give free health care services to physically and mentally challenged individuals across the Commonwealth. I was doing some quick math. As long as he was our chairman at Phillipsburg Lodge, and the amount of money that we typically donate through his coordinated efforts, it was at least $150,000, if not in excess of that during his time. Pete really didn't take a lot of help in that effort. We revolved around him, but he was the nucleus of it all, and we were along for the ride. He was an extremely coordinated individual and how he wanted to, what goals he wanted to meet, how much he wanted to give back, and he was an excellent Elks leader. Phillipsburg Lodge grew under Pete's management, if you will. When I came back from law school in 2005, folks like Georgia Demchak and Pete Byron and Dave Holmes, they were already working their way through. I just didn't know what I was going to do coming back from law school. I just knew I needed to do something. They welcomed me into the fold, and I got to follow Pete just about 5 years behind his progression through those chairs. District State Vice President, District Deputy Grand Exalted Ruler. That opportunity was granted to me about 5 years after Pete because of Pete. So there's a process for how that works. It's internal, it's a little political, but you need a sponsor. You need someone to go to bat for you, bring your name up, and convince the other deputies to allow that to happen. For me, that was Pete Byron. He came to me. I remember the conversation. The question was, are you ready? I think I am. And then the rest just happens. And it takes a guy like Pete to do that. That's what all of this is, folks. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but you should understand, I think the family did a wonderful job representing this. I don't always see that on display. But that's the garb that a district deputy would wear. The black tuxedo is required by the Grand Lodge because you're representing them. If you're wondering why he's wearing a white jacket down here, that's because that's summer attire for a district deputy. And when you are made one at a convention, they expect to have white coat. I bet Pete's still fit. Not everyone's does after a while. That beautiful Joel there is his district deputy's Joel, where he has to wear it when he's doing his work. So we get to keep those when we're done. Pete was always proud to wear it, especially when he did funeral services. He never forgot to wear it. That necklace is his past exalted ruler's tooth. It is an elk's tooth, but the past exalted rulers of Phillipsburg Lodge wear that. That was a tradition that had fallen aside, I think somewhere in the 80s or so. But I believe it was Jack, it was Georgia, Jack, the two Jack Harrington, Jack Hill, and Pete Byron that brought it back. And we all wear them now, along with his past exalted ruler's Joel as well. And I will testify to one final thing. That beautiful plaque that lists his record there, it's a great representation of all the things that Pete did, but it's not an exhaustive list. Every deputy kind of has to decide how much to include. You could probably roll a sheet of paper off the bottom of that and it would roll out to about the third pew if you actually wanted to account for every single thing that probably ought to be on that plaque. Pete, to a place like Phillipsburg Lodge, is irreplaceable. Irreplaceable. There are just a handful of folks who ever get there that do that amount of work, that build a new lodge and grow it into the organization that it is, turn it into the charitable powerhouse that it is, so much money that it gives away, the lives that it impacts, and then, of course, just the work with all the officers. The Jenny Light or the beer you may have afterwards, what's the plan for the future, who's going to come up, who's going to be an officer, what type of difference are they going to make in the world. But the Pete Byrons of the world are in the center of it all. I don't know how you rebuild a nucleus, but we just lost a big part of our nucleus. So I know one final thing, and I conclude on this. From personal experience, I know that when we get to share this amount of time that Pete Byron gave to the order, that means you've shared him with us. You've contributed that time. And I know that he chose to go and do Elks work sometimes when we could have been doing this or spending time with you all. For gifting him to us, for the time that he spent with us, from us to you, thank you for sharing him with us. So I'm a better person because I got to work with Pete Byron for about 15 years. Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing that part of his life. Clearly a very big and important part of his life. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. As I said, please, you don't have to rush out of here. And if you want to spend more time together and talk together about Pete, we certainly encourage you to do that. We're going to be closing out this time together by singing Amazing Grace. We did that at Audrey's service as well. We have the benefit this time of having Dana and Tim lead us again, but I'm inviting you all to sing together the song Amazing Grace. Now this time we're going to sing one more verse than we did last time. We're going to sing the first verse that I think is the best known by everyone. We're also going to sing the third verse, which is through many dangers, toils, and snares, if you know that verse. If you don't, just let us sing to you, okay? And then the final verse is a verse of such hope, the promise of the new creation, when all death, all mourning, crying, sadness, and pain is finally gone forever. When we've been there 10,000 years is the final verse. Would you stand as we sing this together, and then I'll pray to dismiss us.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already known. 'Twas grace that brought you sing a song, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, but shining as the sun, we know there's able to sing of grace. And when we first begun, we know there's able to sing of grace. And when we first begun.
Father of grace and compassion and mercy, thank you for the gift of Pete Byron, for the gift of his family, and all who are here, for this time together, this place, dry and warm, to share in these things together. Now, Father, will you go with all those who leave this place as a very real, very close presence, that they would sense you, your love, your desire and willingness to be close to them in the midst of their grief. Lord, give them the hope of your good promises of a creation to come, where this kind of sorrow has no place, where death has no footing, where life alone and your good righteousness are finally at home. I pray this over them, Lord, now, in Jesus' good name. And all who agree say, Amen. Thank you all again so much. God bless you.